Hello, listeners. Thank you for joining us once again on the Sci-Fi Sunday version 2.0 podcast. We want to hear from you, our listeners, on your thoughts of the Star Wars Skywalker Saga as we count them down to the rise of Skywalker. Simply call 760-456-9469 and leave us your review of any one of the Skywalker Saga films, and you may be featured in a future episode. And now, let's hear some thoughts from one of our listeners on The Phantom Menace.
Hey, this is Fernando Lopez, and I was calling to give my thoughts about The Phantom Menace. I am 26 years old right now, and I am of that younger generation that really appreciates and loves the prequel trilogy. Of course, we loved it when we were kids. I remember when I first saw it, I really only liked the epic fights and the starship, the space battles and all that stuff when we were kids, and I didn't really care about the slower scenes with politics and all that. But now that one is older and one goes back to see those movies, you really understand what George Lucas was trying to do. And it to me, my personal opinion, it kind of seems like a comparison, almost a mirror image of George Lucas trying to portray Palpatine as kind of compared to Hitler's rise to power. Very subtle, and it's when I was a kid, I always thought The Phantom Menace was like it was talking about Darth Maul, but I got the bigger picture now. Obviously, that there's something big going on that the Jedi can't see. That is like a plot trying to destroy them. And you go back and look at the movie now, and it seems very political. But of course, one can't go wrong with just having a geek-gasm when the Duel of the Fates music comes on. Darth Maul, the doors open, Darth Maul pulls out his double-bladed lightsaber, and Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan fighting him. Come on, that is one of the best things ever about the prequel trilogy. It's just my thoughts on it. I obviously could go for an hour about each movie, but I think it was a really great movie. I really liked it. As an older person now, you go back and you look at it. There are some corny things in the movie and kind of cringeworthy, but I guess that was the aspect of George Lucas trying to reach a younger audience. All right, thanks, guys. Bye.
Start with your tone.
Are you telling me you built a time machine?
There is no school.
These aren't the droids, Yoda.
Get away from her, you bitch!
Well, let me finish them, please.
I only have one rule. Everyone fights, no one quits.
Welcome to the Sci-Fi Sunday version 2.0 podcast. I'm your host, David S. Dawson, and today I am joined by three of my regular co-hosts of this show to discuss Star Wars: The Phantom Menace, the first film review of Sci-Fi Sunday leading into Rise of Skywalker in December. We will be breaking it down movie by movie, the entire Skywalker saga from here until the release of the new film, roughly one a week, although I guess technically this week would be two, because we're a little bit behind. But, we start with what kids today would consider the first Star Wars film, Episode 1. Joining me for today is Jordan Jacobo.
That's a name I haven't heard in a long time.
I got you right today.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
And Mike Peterson.
The force is strong with this one.
And my sister... My sister, the lovely and talented, and she can drink anybody under the table, Theresa Dawson.
What's up, everybody?
So Mike and I were talking before everybody got onto the line about the fact that the Phantom Menace is in fact 20 years old now.
It's insane.
Jeez.
How crazy is it? It's crazy, right?
Oh, where did the time go, huh? I've wasted my youth.
So I just want to, before we get into talking about the movie, I want to kind of set the scene for where it was when the Phantom Menace came out, right? It was the late 90s. The X-Files was huge on television.
Right.
Beverly Hills 90210 was still original cast finishing their run.
Oh, Jesus, really?
Right? Yeah. I think Friends was still on.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's
99.
It's a long time ago, right? Like, these were things that were like massive pop culture phenomenons at the time, and now everybody's looking at reunions and revivals of these things. And Star Wars was nowhere to be found, really. And then all of a sudden in the late 90s, the special editions were dropped, and then the announcement that a new trilogy was coming, episodes 1 through 3, and the Phantom Menace dropped. And this was pre-internet. Well, pre the internet as we know it today. You still had like America Online and
we had to go wait in line just to
we had to go wait in line for tickets. Teresa and I stood in line for tickets for
3 days.
3 days.
3 days.
Oh my God.
And we stood
to
in
be
line.
the first people to buy tickets, and then we stood in line for 3 days to get the first inside.
Yes, and we stood in line. It was my birthday.
Oh, happy birthday.
Yeah, we stood in line on my birthday. It was great.
Yeah, I got the
How many people were lightsaber fighting in the...
Oh,
sorry.
A lot of us.
A lot of us. And actually, we got into the San Diego Union Tribune. Mm-hmm. We got into the North County Times, which doesn't even exist anymore. So we made it into a bunch of the news in San Diego as the crazy Star Wars fans who were waiting in line for stuff.
Yeah.
So cool.
Yeah, we got like all the couple thousand people to sing happy birthday to David, so that was pretty fun.
Nice.
Very cool.
I made a couple Star Wars cakes, actually.
Yeah, you made a Darth Maul cake.
Yeah.
Which was awesome.
I drew his face on a cake. It was awesome.
On a German chocolate cake.
Yeah.
Oh, that sounds amazingly delicious.
Yeah, but it was a fun time because suddenly Star Wars was back, and those of us who'd grown up on Star Wars, but maybe didn't quite remember the experience of seeing the original in the theaters. I mean, I was, 2 when A New Hope dropped, and it was prior to Theresa being born. This was the chance we had to get to experience a brand new Star Wars run right from the start. And it was exciting. It was super exciting. Mike, what was your experience?
Can I tell you this real quick?
Oh, Jordan, go ahead. Go ahead, Jordan.
Sorry. So in 1995, when they announced that they were going to make prequels, Time Magazine had an article, and I had been a lifelong Star Wars fan. So I nerded out, and I made my dad get me that Time Magazine issue. And I remember they had a piece of art from episode 1, and it was just like a weird ship docked in Coruscant with a bunch of little ships flying around it. And I remember looking at that and just wondering what the hell it was going to consist of. And to this day, what is it? Something like 25 years later, that same image is my background screen wallpaper on my computer. Like I just remember that moment of being fascinated by that image and wondering what secrets it had. And it was incredible for me.
Cool.
Yeah.
Mike, what was your experience? Because you're a bit younger than I am. So
absolutely. So I was introduced to Star Wars when the special editions came out in theaters. So that's 97, I want to say.
Yeah,
so
right out there.
Yeah. So I was 13. And I knew of it, and I know I've seen pieces of it growing up, but it wasn't until the special editions came out that I really got into Star Wars. So yeah, 99, I would have been 15 when Phantom Menace came out. And, I definitely appreciate both parts of the old trilogy and then the prequels, which we'll get into this a little later. But like, when Phantom came out, I was stoked because I finally saw lightsaber battling that I've wanted to see the entire time.
Yeah, well, those of us who did watch them, I at least remember Empire, and I definitely remember Jedi at the movie theaters as a child. Obi-Wan's battle with Darth Maul, Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon and Darth Maul battling, even just seeing hints of it in the trailers was like, oh my God, I'm actually going to see a real lightsaber duel. Right. This is going to be awesome.
Oh, yeah.
So I was introduced really by when the special editions all came out. Mm-hmm. I mean, I still need to. You guys gave me the as best as you can find unspecialized, the despecialized
editions. We gave you a copy of all those on Blu-ray.
I still need to actually watch those, which I'm going to do when we actually get to the New Hope and all that.
Awesome.
But yeah, that's where I got into it all.
Cool. Theresa, do you have any remembrance of what you thought when you heard these were coming?
I do remember just the excitement and the craziness of the fact that we were getting prequels. And because prequels wasn't a thing.
No, absolutely not.
It wasn't a thing. That wasn't what anybody did. Nobody went backwards and started over until the story ahead of time, so it was, I remember it just being fascinated with the fact that we were getting this story. And we were going to see how we got to New Hope, so I was excited of this new way of doing it.
And I want to give kudos to Theresa. Theresa has been a Star Wars fan for as long as I can remember, and I've known her entire life. She is a geek girl, tried and true all the way. She's not a modern she's come to like Star Wars because it's okay to be a nerd now. Theresa didn't give a crap when she was a kid. She liked Star Wars as a young girl.
Yep.
And I've always adored the fact that my sister can geek out with Star Wars with me and all my buddies. And here we are, grown-ass adults, and we're still doing it.
Right.
So all the kudos to you, T.
Yeah, I was definitely a geek girl when it wasn't cool to be a geek girl. That's for sure. Absolutely. But I think what was even more interesting is I was also a jock.
Yeah.
A hardcore jock too. So being the hardcore jock, but also being a geek girl is
nobody would give you crap about being a geek girl because they knew you'd kick their ass.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So
a double threat.
Yeah.
So that's what I remember is just the craziness of, oh my God, we're gonna get the pre-story. That was just weird. It was awesome, but it was weird.
Right.
This was for me Vader has always been my favorite villain of all time. Just his look, the whole voice, the entire thing. So knowing that this story was about how Anakin becomes Vader over a trilogy is awesome. So that's what I think what got a lot of us into it. And I remember
conceptually, it's the most brilliant idea to tell. Conceptually,
yes.
And
we'll talk about the actual execution over the next couple of podcasts.
Right. But when you go back to the movie posters that came out. It had young Anakin with the shadow of Vader back on one of them.
I've got that poster in a frame.
That cool. And then the other one, which is the entire cast poster, but just Maul's beady red yellow eyes in the back. Just was just this is the cool. And Maul's okay, if I'm gonna have another villain, this is the coolest badass looking villain I've ever seen. Going into this.
Yeah, you go from having a villain who doesn't show his face to a villain who's all about showing his face.
Absolutely.
which was really interesting. Okay, so let's go into the deep dive on the film. We're going to start from the beginning and work our way all the way through. I've taken copious notes. I know Jordan's taken copious notes. So let's just get right into it. I mean, the fanfare is the fanfare. It's until the Force Awakens. It was always the same.
and like, so I'm watching it, and I've got the old THX before. I'm like, oh, I missed that.
I was watching it with Sean today, and the THX stuff comes on at the end of the Blu-ray, and Sean goes, "What is that?" Well, back in the day, the best sound came from Lucasfilm. It was THX.
Yeah.
So anyway, so it's great to hear THX again. It's great to hear the fanfare start up. The movie begins, and here's what I wrote about the scroll, because everybody was curious what the opening scroll was going to be. And I want to think of this in two ways. There's those of us who remember the original films, and there were people who and are today brand new to Star Wars, and this is the first scroll that they read.
Yep.
Right.
Scroll, my notes. Boring. Reads like a poli-sci homework assignment.
Nice.
It is a very political science scroll.
Taxation of trade routes.
Yeah. They they really hit home with that one, didn't they?
Yeah.
Well, but it was a smart move because George Lucas essentially is saying, "Hey, brace yourself for crap, fellas." And anybody who was surprised, hey, that's on us. We really should have seen this coming.
Well, I remember sitting in the theater, and I was there with all my friends, right? And Dad was there too, right? T?
Yeah.
And I think it was my dad. I think my dad was the one sitting next to me, because whoever was sitting next to me leaned over and went, "Boy, that's a really, really dry opening." And I thought, okay, I'm going to ignore that comment and I'm just going to enjoy the ride. But you're right, Jordan. It's kind of setting up everybody for what's to come in a lot of ways. Yeah. So don't look for excitement in the opening scroll of the Phantom Menace. It's not there. And it really doesn't come right away either. Like the other films kind of start into battles and stuff, and this movie comes down to a ship landing inside another ship, and then a couple of cloaked figures talking to a protocol droid, and then walking into a room and taking their hoods off like it's some dramatic reveal that they're Jedi. And then there's a discussion about trade routes and the Chancellor shouldn't have sent them there, and then a ship gets shot while it's in the docking bay.
Yeah, it started with ambassadorial procedures.
Then the Jedi ignite their lightsabers, and you're like, yes, there's lightsabers. And then there's gas blown into the room, and they hold their breath. And then I mean...
It's a slow start. It's a slow starter. It is a slow starting movie. It really is.
And then
I don't know. I do like. Oh, sorry.
And then you have these amazing battle droids walk on, right? The B-1 battle droids, and you think, wow, they look really cool, right? They got like an African mask kind of design to them, like just wow, they're really neat design. And then they go, Roger, Roger.
So true, though. Like, I mean,
what?
Why are these battle droids like comic relief? Like,
completely.
I don't understand.
So true. It's like meeting a hot girl, and then you find out she got a nasally voice, and you're like, all right, you know what? I'm good. I'm fine.
Did I do that?
Nice.
They're the Fran Drescher of the Star Wars universe. Each and every B1 droid.
I don't know. Some of the other alien voices in this were all like...
They were all the Viceroy and stuff, like all the Trade Federation
people.
That was the worst, because I remember my dad went to go see it, and he goes, hey, I don't... this might be a sore subject, but... why are all the bad guys Japanese? And I was like, Dad, that's the most racist and accurate thing you've ever said. I don't know.
Why are they all Japanese?
Two of them.
It was terrible.
I mean, Theresa and I are Filipino. We're part Asian, and I have to confess, I was like, I'm not entirely sure how I feel about these guys. Yeah. They're crappy bad guys.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, they're stupid.
And B,
yeah, they're terrible.
Why are they Japanese? Why do the British guys get all the good ones? I don't know. And that's continued, right? The British guys still make the best bad guys, apparently. But I digress. So in the boring ass meeting with two Jedi alone with a prissy protocol droid, there is something interesting that happens in there. Qui-Gon Jinn, while talking to Obi-Wan, says to be mindful of the living force. Mm-hmm. And as far as I recall, that's the first time in Star Wars films that there's a distinction drawn outside of light and dark.
Yes.
This idea of the living force. Yes. And we'll get a little bit more into why I think that's substantial. But I did get excited. I remember when we were watching the film the first time and watching it again today, thinking, boy, there's a lot of potential here in expanding the force beyond this idea of just light and dark. I don't know. It's just my thought.
No, it's very true.
I agree with you.
Yeah. So cool. Okay.
But I mean, as we've seen, sorry.
No, go ahead, Jordan.
Well, so Qui-Gon, from what I understand, he's more focused on the living force, right? For everything I've read about the guy. But I mean, it didn't do him much good because the moment he gets in there, Obi-Wan's like, "Hey, something's wrong," and Qui-Gon's like, "I don't sense anything." And then they try to assassinate him 30 seconds later. I mean, you know what? If ever there was a reason to give up the living force and maybe look into other force directives, that's it. I think.
Or maybe it's
no good.
Qui-Gon was
maybe
kind of like
just bad writing.
The hippie of Jedis going with the living force.
No, that's true. That's true. I think you're right on both counts, actually.
But I did like the bit of dialogue there because Obi-Wan's worried about the potential. What might happen. And Qui-Gon's telling him to stay grounded. In
the moment.
Be in the moment, be right here. Don't worry about what's going to happen down the road, which does get back to some of Yoda's teachings, which when we get to the original trilogy or episode 5, you have to be mindful of the now and not be obsessed and overly focused on the what if, the unknown future. So it was kind of a reinforcement of that. And I liked that it was brought into a conversation as being mindful of the living force, which is the force that's now, as opposed to the unknown force of what the future is, which I think is kind of cool. Okay. So they start fighting the battle droids. Cool design for the most idiotic fighters in the galaxy.
The droidekas were cool though.
The droidekas are cool.
So cool.
Now, interesting. The droidekas have shields here, and it's kind of a throwaway line, but it sounds like that was a new development because Obi-Wan's like, they have shields. He was super surprised.
Which they don't, as surprised as a Jedi gets.
Which they don't during the final battle, which I was always like, interesting choice.
Oh my God, you're right. I never noticed that.
Yeah, so I think these were like special units that were sent, maybe for this purpose. I don't know, but in all the video games, they always got the damn shields.
Every single one of them had the shield. But yeah, it seemed like only the ones that were with the viceroys and stuff had the shields.
Yeah. Now, one of the things I remember really, and we kind of talked about it with the lightsaber duels and all the things that you were looking forward to with the prequel trilogy, one of my absolute favorite moments ever with any Jedi in anything I've ever seen is Qui-Gon Jinn melting the doors with his lightsaber, not slicing it, just
best thing ever.
Heating the thing up from the middle and turning, and and it's just gooping and dripping away as molten metal.
Yeah.
That felt so menacing, and he's coming through the door. Like Jedi are unstoppable is what it felt
Right.
like.
Absolutely.
I thought that was for me when the movie kind of finally goes, hey, here we are. We're doing something incredible. Watch us now. And that's good. It's a good 10 minutes into the movie before that happens. But I loved that whole sequence of melting the door, Obi-Wan taking care of the B-1 battle droids, and then taking care of the droidicas. I thought that was just incredibly cool.
Well, and then they ran fast too. So like they
then
run.
They have Jedi speed, which you don't see very often.
No.
Yeah, well, thankfully you don't, because I took another look at that effect. As they're running down the hallway, the sea, I don't know what kind of special effects they use, but it so does not hold up. It's horrible. They added in a weird motion blur, but I think they used iMovie. It looks horrendous.
I don't think iMovie even existed when the movie was made.
The CG in this movie was,
which at the time was like
spectacular.
Lucas, absolutely.
Well, I would say this. I would say 98% of this movie's visual effects still hold up.
Absolutely.
But them running down the hallway didn't even hold up back then.
Yeah.
It was.
You're right.
They turn into a weird wispy blur, and it just doesn't quite work, especially since you don't ever see the Jedi do that ever again.
Well, and
they should have
at that point you don't you've gotten that with the video games that have come out. You understand the force speed that you can run, but like at that point, up to that with other movies, like it's never been done. So it was like, whoa, they just vanished. Like they're just really quick.
Yeah. So
I mean, they could have sped up the film, but the problem was they shot it in England, and under British law, anytime you speed up film within the country, you need to add yakety sax to make it. It's an homage to Benny Hill, and I think George Lucas just wanted to avoid that, and smartly so. I get it.
Jordan can't help being a comedy writer.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. They could have used you on this film, really.
I would have loved to.
Yeah. So I loved the potential of what we saw coming from the Jedi at that point. We can argue and will argue over the next couple of movies about whether or not that potential was ever fully realized. Or if it was just kind of still hinted at and not quite achieved. Shortly after that, we get introduced to Queen Amidala, Natalie Portman.
Baby Natalie Portman.
Oh
yeah. She was 17 when they shot this,
something like that.
Yeah.
So it was 3 or 4 years after she'd done The Professional.
Yeah.
And I remember everyone was super excited that she got cast in Star Wars because everybody loved her in The Professional.
She was excellent. She was the best part of that film.
Yeah, she was fantastic in that film. My notes on being introduced to Natalie Portman's Queen Amidala read beautiful and overly stoic. Which is not
that's much nicer than my notes. Mine quite literally say Portman sucks. It's just 2 words. That's all my notes on her. I'll send you a screenshot. Then you're not going to believe me.
Well, I mean that's really interesting because one of my notes that I have on this, especially down in my summary, my review, is that Lucas. And I blame Lucas on this because there are a lot of really amazing actors in this movie. I mean, really. Natalie Portman is still a fantastic actress. When she's given the right material and she's got the right director, she's incredible.
I agree with you 100% on that. Yes.
Ewan McGregor's amazing. Liam Neeson is amazing.
Yeah.
Sam Jackson can be amazing. Terrence Stamp can be amazing. These people are fantastic actors, but somehow in The Phantom Menace, it's like the direction was be less emotional, be more stoic across the board. to the point where everybody is less interesting than the droids and the animated characters, who are full of acting performance.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jeez.
Am I right? I mean, that's what
you're absolutely right.
That's what I've seen in the film, is like all the animated characters are over the top, big performance.
Yep.
Right? Think of Watto.
Oh my God, you're right.
Think of, I'm a Toydarian. Right? You got Watto. You got Jar Jar Binks. Misa big. I'm always big. I'm always big. Everywhere I go, I'm big. Right? Boss Nass. Misa take you to the planet core. You know, they're all huge characters. But all the human beings in the film are Viceroy. I have no confidence in you. I vote for call of no confidence. Be mindful of.
Well, it was even worse than that.
You know, it's just, yeah.
Yeah, you've gone too far this time. Holy crap! With her dead eyes. I mean, somebody put some life into her. But you're right. You're right. It's got to be the directing, because, like you said, all the non-humans, everybody that was CG was cranked up to 11, but every single human except for Palpatine was cranked down to 2. It was terrible.
It's like Ian McDiarmid was like, to hell with this. I'm going to do my thing no matter what anybody else does.
The man's a pro.
He's like, I've done one of these before. I've got my thing. I'm going to do my thing.
Poor Jake Lloyd. Oh my God, that kid. Cute kid, but he can't act worth crap.
Yeah.
Really? I thought the opposite watching it. I used to think that, but I saw it this time and I go, this kid's not so bad. It's not as bad as I remember.
He has moments.
Yeah.
He has moments where he's actually pretty good. He has other moments where he could have used a director who knew how to direct actors. It's interesting.
Right.
We're told as directors to not do several things. One is don't direct children. 2 is don't direct animals. And I forget what 3 is, but I'm pretty sure George Lucas violates all 3 all the time.
Whatever the third one is
in this film. Be present as a director. Anyway. The acting in this is terrible, but I don't know that it's necessarily the fault of the actors. And I think they do the best they can under the kind of containment that they've been given. And some of them manage to find moments of brilliance. And we'll touch on some of those. But I thought, like, the woman who plays Shmi in that goodbye scene with Anakin.
Yep.
I don't think Anakin's very good in that scene, but I think she's fantastic.
Oh no, he's not.
The subtle acting she does in moments like that, where it's the breath, it's the look, it's the way she holds her body. She's got some moments where she really conveys this parent who's sending her child off to the unknown.
Yeah.
But knowing it's probably what's best for him. It's heartbreaking to watch that moment with her. If you're watching Star Wars prequels for acting, you're in the wrong place, baby. That's all I'm saying. Only a couple of moments that stand out, but we'll get into a couple of those other moments as we go along. I also was struck watching this again. We were talking about the CGI. This film used more CGI than any film before it.
Yep.
And overall, I think the effects still hold up very well 20 years later, which is not always the case with visual effects movies. Maybe becoming less and less the case where they don't, because the tools have come a long way. But this is the movie that brought the tools to where they're at today, where I think a lot of visual effects, even on lower budgeted movies, are really holding up for the long term.
Well, that's Lucas always said, like, he was waiting to always do the prequels until the technology was there.
Mm-hmm.
And he was waiting for the CG to be there for a lot of it.
Yeah.
Well, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and if you look at everything he did if you look at everything he did from A New Hope on, he created ILM to do the visual effects work that he needed for Star Wars, because visual effects basically had kind of gone away with the realism of film in the 70s. So he had to create a whole new department to do that. And so he created ILM, and he spent the next 20 years really ramping up what that company could do. And if you look at all the things that came from the ILM brain trust, not just movies that we loved, right? The Indiana Jones films, the Willow, on and on, Jurassic Park. We get to the CGI world with Jurassic Park. But the CGI stuff is a direct line from the creation of the Pixar computer systems that were created at Lucasfilm to start doing CGI.
Right.
And eventually he sold Pixar off as a division to Steve Jobs, because he figured Steve Jobs could figure out something bigger to do with it than he was currently doing with it at ILM. Pixar ran off and started doing amazing stuff, and the Pixar people came back and helped and assisted in the creation of CGI for Jurassic Park at ILM. And as part of that whole endeavor, then we're able to convince Disney that they could do more than short films. Look at this stuff that we're doing with ILM. We can do a whole feature film that's animated, and we get Toy Story. Right. You can take Toy Story all the way back to George Lucas. The man has pushed filmmaking, and specifically digital filmmaking, so far forward. Movies wouldn't be where they are today without George Lucas. And regardless of what we have to say about the prequels and their quality, or whether we like them as stories, I always want to make sure I give George Lucas credit for creating the tools that allow me to be a filmmaker today. And the prequels are a big part of that. So,
nicely said.
Soapbox.
Yeah, nicely said. Nicely said. That said, he's terrible at directing people.
Yes, and digital characters. Jar Jar was a revelation in character animation. But one thing that I discovered watching it today was his skin in the forest, especially in the earlier scenes, doesn't hold up as well as I remember it doing when I watched the film 20 years ago. He actually looked like a cartoon character for a lot of it to me today.
Yep.
Yeah.
Which my brain was like, I'm watching it today going, wait, what? No, this was better than this.
Apparently it wasn't.
Is it maybe just also just the contrast with being an orange character with a green background versus when he's on Tatooine, where he kind of just blends in?
That's a good point.
Maybe there's a little bit of that, but there were advancements that have been made in CGI skin since Jar Jar came out. So, I mean, the thing we have to remember is Jar Jar was the first fully realized main character in a feature film that's entirely CGI. And the tools were in their infancy, right? So he really was still just an animated character that they manipulated lighting as best they could to try and create the illusion of him being there. The CGI characters they created later, even within this prequel trilogy, they kept improving the tools. And so there's little things like you can't see light passing through the tissues of his ears.
Oh, okay.
And CGI characters that we watch today, the skin is affected by light, by backlighting, by interior lighting, by whatever. There's a translucency to the skin and stuff that just doesn't exist in Jar Jar in episode 1. I'm going to be curious to see how those characters change over the next couple of films. Especially Yoda, because I know a lot of these advancements were made for Yoda so that like his ears had a more realistic quality to them. And then they perfected a lot of those kinds of techniques with Dobby in the Harry Potter films.
Oh, okay, yep.
But like we wouldn't have Dobby in the Harry Potter films. And I recently rewatched Harry Potter. And Dobby, man, that character holds up so well. But you wouldn't have Dobby without Jar Jar. right? And when Dobby dies in the Harry Potter films, it's freaking heartbreaking.
Oh yeah,
he's a real character.
Sad.
You care about him, and when Harry's holding him and he's dying in his arms, like that has emotional weight to it for a character that doesn't exist. You wouldn't have that without Jar Jar Binks and Yoda and all the rest of these characters from Star Wars. They're what moved movie making to this place where we can have Professor Hulk.
Right.
Yeah. So anyway, this was also the introduction of the Jedi utility belt, where they pulled out the breathers to go breathing underwater. And I'm like,
it was cool, but it was weird. I mean, what are they, Batman and Robin?
Batman, yeah.
Yeah, it was strange, man. I get that Liam Neeson trained them both, but can we limit the crossover? Oh, jeez.
What did you guys think of, was it Otogunga, the Gungan City?
How does that massive city exist in that pond? He jumps in a pond that has no outlet to the outside ocean, and suddenly they're in the middle of the Pacific. How does that work out? I don't. That said, the city looked amazing. I just don't understand.
Well, it seems to me, Jordan, just by the fact that they can take a bongo through the planet core, that Naboo has a fairly extensive wet cave system.
It's just, somebody explained this to me, because I was it always disturbed me.
I thought I just explained it to you.
Well, no, now, 20 years in, but when I was 17, I didn't know what I was looking at. Well, that solves the mystery of Otto Bungo.
I thought it was beautiful.
Absolutely.
Like, the whole idea of encapsulated air in bubbles that become, structures. I thought it was.
Well, and what's incredible is we've never seen anything like it, right? And the thing is, Star Wars has pushed the boundaries there, in that it shows you things that are somehow familiar but still unseen, right? And so when I saw that, it never occurred to me that you could make an underwater city like they did, in those weird bubbles. I remember being fascinated by it. Quite frankly, I wanted to see more.
Yeah, me too. I wanted to see more of it. And I liked that when they got in there, and this is a tribute to the sound department, when you're inside it, it sounds like muffled ocean sounds and stuff around, and the vocal quality inside those bubbles has a slightly different refraction to it that just made the whole place feel very otherworldly and different, which I got to say this, the prequels really, they swung for the fences on locations and giving us things we've never seen before, to Mike's statement. And I thought Otogunga was a wonderful addition to the Star Wars universe. That said, it's full of Gungans, which you may or may not like.
Well, they all look identical, except for Tarples and the fat guy. They all look like Jar Jars.
Yeah, they were very hard to distinguish one from the other, except for Tarples and Boss Nass.
Mm-hmm.
Boss Nass.
Yeah, and that's not me being racist. They do legitimately look alike.
Although, can you really tell the difference from one gecko to another? No, but at least if geckos wore clothes, I'd like to think that they'd use some variety. One gecko would have a tuxedo, another one would have one of those, female body inspector shirts you get in Rosarito. But here, every single person was dressed in the same damn thing, except for Boss Nass and Tarples, and I didn't understand it. That said, I think we only see the military of the Gungans through the film. I don't think we get into the general population for the most part. I think that makes.
Can I get a fat Gungan? Just a fat Gungan, just one. You know what I mean? Or one Gungan that put his ears up, or you know what I mean? Can I get a tall Gungan? Can I get an Asian Gungan? It makes no sense to me. It really. What do I know?
Okay. Theresa, what were your thoughts on the Gungan City?
I was with Jordan on the whole. They go into this tiny lake. And
Thank you.
Big, huge city. So that, people on the planet may or may not know about these guys. So it's like,
it's a huge city. It's hidden.
That took me a while on that one. And then they're comical. Like the head guy and his talk,
And the
yeah, it's like, what, really? Like, they are smart enough to somehow have this big giant hidden city with these cool technological ships and bombs and stuff like that, yet they sound like idiots, so I couldn't. That's my thought on that one.
The society itself doesn't make sense, right? Because it's a whole society of Jamaican rabbit frogs led by a voodoo frog. You know what I mean? Like, can we at least get some representation?
Yeah, the general had like a Fu
Gungan?
Manchu, didn't he? Like he had the.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm telling you, they were the only ones that looked different. But why is Boss Nass green and everybody else is orange? It hints to a ruling class that I don't like.
Well, Tarples is gray.
Oh, he is?
Yep.
All right, well, never mind. I like the level of representation within the Star Wars universe. Good on you, George Lucas.
Well, Star Wars is a class. I mean, it is a class society. Star Wars. The universe of Star Wars is a class society.
That's true.
Yeah.
So even on Naboo, which is, this paradise, the non-humans are kind of relegated off to the side and forgotten about.
Yep.
Yeah, it's disgusting.
Boss Nass, for better or worse, was a big character choice. One of many, many animated characters with huge character choices. I remember loving it when I first saw the film. Like, maybe because I was starved for like some performance at that point. But watching it again today, I was like, oof, the drooling and and all that stuff. Like,
right?
Like motorboating? Like, what character's why is this character motorboating?
You know what, David? When this movie came out, you and I had this discussion because you liked it, and I was like, "What is this crap? Like, what is it? Like what is that?" But you're like, "No, he's great. There's so much character to it." I said, "No, that's not character. That's talking with cotton balls in your cheeks and like I don't."
So I did watch it with Sean today, Teresa's 9-year-old son, my nephew, and he turns to me as Boss Nass is finishing his first round of dialogue and goes, "Huh?" I go, "What do you mean, huh?" He goes, "I don't understand anything he said." And I said, well, he said, "I'm going to give you a bongo and you're going to take it through the planet core." And Sean goes, "Huh?" I don't understand anything going on right now. I'm like, okay, fair enough.
Fair enough. Neither do the adults.
At least with Chewbacca, we got context clues. You know what I mean? People respond to Chewbacca and be like, all right, I don't need to know what he's saying. But these guys, I mean, they're giving us Boss Nass and Jar Jar that we're supposed to know what they're saying. And I mean, they're jive talking. I don't speak jive. June Cleaver could have, I don't know. Just give me somebody, you know what I mean? Cut me some slack, Jack. That's all I'm saying.
To me, the Gungan race living underwater absolutely made no sense. They don't have webbed hands. They don't have webbed feet. Their ears are big to hear stuff. That doesn't work underwater.
Here's the biology.
Wow, good point.
Here's the biology major.
Yeah,
right here.
The biology right here made no sense whatsoever.
Well, they don't live underwater. They live in bubbles underwater.
Yeah.
But they're good because they're good swimmers.
Yeah,
with big clunky
feet.
With big clunky feet and no.
my assumption on that, and this also gets back to my thing about the pond, and you got to go through a cave system to get to where they're at. They're not actually in the ocean; they're deep inside the planet, because we never really see a surface.
Well, it's hidden. So
my thought is,
enough.
they're very xenophobic, and I mean, you see it when Jar Jar and the Jedi come into the city. The few people who are there, who are probably not military, are in a panic at these strangers who've suddenly come into the city. I think somewhere in the past, them and the humans on Naboo didn't get along, and the Gungans retreated and figured out how to survive on their planet in a way where they wouldn't be bothered by the human beings. And the best way to do that was to go underground or underwater. And that's how their whole civilization became what it is.
It's a Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe.
Oh,
yeah, and it makes so much sense that they're xenophobic, because I mean, you never see them in any of the other Star Wars films, even in the regular trilogy. I mean, you know what I mean? So it would make sense that they just never, or even the surface of Naboo.
Yeah. So for better or worse, the Jedi end up on a bongo, heading through the planet core. Let's not get into the science there, Mr. Scientist.
So many things. It's like I literally when I lived in Hawaii, I had someone says, "How do you get to the other side? Is there a boat that goes underneath the island?" I'm like, "Fuck!"
My god,
I hate people so goddamn much.
Shut up!
Is it like a bongo I can rent?
Not.
Oh yeah. Lava tubes, right? Lava tubes.
Wow. God.
Oh, that's hilarious.
So, biology major, here's my next note, and I want to get your perspective on this before we hear the rest. Always a bigger fish.
Yeah.
Fun life lesson, a visual effects marvel, especially for the time. What did you, as the biology major, think of that whole sequence?
Oh, I loved it. That was all fun. It was all just, and I love that both, Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon are just chill the entire time.
Well, yeah, because they've been directed not to act, just to sit.
There you go. Yeah, it was. But yeah, bigger fish, and yeah, it was interesting. Just a fun little chain of events.
Yeah. Now, there's a subtle piece as a biology major. I don't know if you're aware of this, but when they power down and they're restarting the bongo and the lights come on and there's the kind of crocodile,
the
bioluminescent one in front of him. If you look on the cave walls, there are tiny versions of that bioluminescent creature crawling up the walls.
Mm-hmm.
And that bioluminescent creature, according to the animators, attacks the bongo to protect its young.
It's cool. I don't think I ever saw that.
Yeah, so that's something. The next time you watch The Phantom Menace, look for that. The animators are doing a fart ton of amazing things in the background of that scene, telling their own side stories in the Star Wars universe of these creatures underwater. So make sure you check it out.
That's
awesome. The sad part of that is she chases them out of the cave and then gets eaten by the big fish, which means the young either are Nemo now, or they get eaten as well. That's up to you to decide.
Oh my god! There's no winners in this scenario. Thanks, animators. Jeez.
But I love that little bit, and the beauty of the Star Wars prequels is the fact that there are so many people with their hands on the stories, animating backgrounds and animating things that are going on, because everything was green screened for the most part. So there's so much animation happening in the background that there's a lot of little stories being told in the background of scenes if you're paying attention for it. So, doesn't make the storyline, the main storyline, better, but it makes the Star Wars universe richer, if you will.
It's a universe of countless stories. They wrote an entire book based on the characters of the Cantina in Episode 4. I just love the depth in this universe, and that you can't deny.
Yep.
Yeah.
getting back to visual effects, the droid army starts approaching Naboo. We see the cityscape of Naboo. We'd never seen a cityscape like that in a movie before, of a city that doesn't exist. It was breathtaking. And watching it again today, 20 years later,
it's still pretty.
Still very pretty. Still holds up really, really well. But you can see so many films that came after it. Gladiator and, Thor Ragnarok, when they're seeing the cityscapes in those films, like, you can go all the way back to this movie, creating a whole new way of showing things on film. Pretty cool.
Do you know how they made the waterfalls for Naboo?
Salt, baby.
Yep. That was awesome.
Baby.
Yep.
Yeah, they shot salt pouring down on. It wasn't green screened. I think they did those as luminance keys. But yeah, it was on black backgrounds, and they just poured the salt straight out of a Morton salt container.
Yep.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
So those of you looking to make budget films, there are ways to do effects without the computer that are pretty effective. Go ahead, Jordan.
Yeah, okay, so my question is this. Why do the droids land so far from Theed? I get landing just outside the city, but they landed on the other side of the forest. It must have taken them forever to get to the city. It didn't make sense to me.
I think it was just so the visual effects team could show them trudging through the forest, scooping up the field mice and
popping them on the head.
Pretty lazy writing, George Lucas.
No, there's definitely a lot of stuff in the script that are written in a way just to give the visual effects team stuff to do.
Right.
Yeah. Shame on them.
There's a lot of ships landing in the prequels. And not just like, ooh, comes in, like, no, you watch it like come down and settle and everything grinds to a halt. There's a lot of really meticulous ship landing shots in the prequels. And it all started in that very first scene when the ship lands inside the ship.
Yep.
That's what we were told to watch for right in the very beginning. Ships landing. Lots of it.
And they look nice. They all look great.
Yeah, but I think, especially as we get further along, I think you could have cut out 5-10 minutes of time out of every single one of these films to give more time to telling story than showing ships landing constantly. Just my thought.
Easily. We want to talk about a waste of time. Look, I'm sorry. I'm glad that Anakin likes pod racing, but that thing went on forever.
We'll get to that in a minute.
Okay.
Amidala and Padme, which is Portman and which is Keira Knightley?
To answer your question, the hot one is both of them all the time.
But that's become a game for me when I watch The Phantom Menace, is to try and figure out who's who in each scene.
Yeah.
Right.
So I had a thing about the whole I was asking Mike. I'm like, okay, so question, I've always wanted to know this. How does the decoy know what to say as queen?
That's a good question.
They talk about that in the novel.
Okay.
That there's like subtle like facial clues and stuff that they give each other that kind of tells them
okay, except she's
which way to go.
She's staring forward. So even if Padme is giving click clicks, wink wink, whatever the hell it is, how the fuck is the queen decoy supposed to see that when she's standing behind her? That's a load of horse shit is what that is. So
I can actually answer that.
Yeah.
Oh, so what happened was, okay, remember when R2-D2 comes out and then the queen goes, oh, what's this model's name? Like R2-D2. She goes, Padme, clean him up. Padme stands in front of her and then they start discussing business. And then at that point, Portman and Keira Knightley are staring at each other. But when they're like, hey, should we get on the ships and get out of here? Portman is standing behind her. And so she's like, we're brave, Your Highness. So at that juncture, I think that kind of solve that, unless there's a scene I'm
there's
missing.
A scene you're missing. There are a couple of them where the queen decoy just talks. And there is no hint or something from Padme.
Well, then again, lazy writing. Shame on Lucas.
But anyways, that was always a problem I had issues with that.
Yeah. Portman's down flirting with Anakin in the hold. And,
like this. What did I call her?
Knightley's up making illegal decisions for the planet of Naboo.
She's like the youngest cougar ever.
Ew. Oh my God, you're right.
Yeah.
This is also where we get introduced to R2-D2, which brings us to the biggest, most important question of the prequels. How many astromechs does it take to fix a shield generator?
Right? Seriously.
Hello, boyos.
Good point.
The answer
I often wonder.
The answer is one.
Well, but here's the question too with that. The other three? How stupid are they? They weren't even in the right spot because R2 did it all in the one spot. So what the hell were those guys working on? I mean, come on.
I guess that answers my question, because when I saw the 4 astromech droids, right, I always said, well, if those guys had survived, would they have had as cool of a life as R2-D2? But I guess the answer is no, because they're dumb. They're working on the wrong part of the ship while R2-D2's, nailing it.
Yep.
Okay. Well, that answers that.
So
you know what I didn't like, though? R2-D2 never puts his input thing in a ship. I mean, he did it that time. I guess he kind of does, right? But he never, you know how he interfaces with stuff like the Death Star? Like he does this in every movie except for this movie, and I kind of wanted to see that,
Well, he did a little bit.
I guess my point is I wanted to see R2-D2 have sex with that sexy
There wasn't enough droid porn for you, huh?
Yeah, could have used more droid porn. That's my complaint with every movie, really.
You just need to go to droidhub.com.
I don't know. I mean, you see a naked C-3PO. Your parts are showing.
There you go.
That's right. That'll have to do.
So at this point, they go hauling ass for Tatooine, because Qui-Gon says it's a good place to go because the Hutts control it, and that gives them a better chance of survival than going anywhere else. I don't know. But the thing that really struck me here was Qui-Gon is always so sure of himself. Always. Like nobody else's opinion matters to Qui-Gon but Qui-Gon. Is this the first signs of Jedi overconfidence?
Yes.
That's what I wrote.
Yeah.
Well, and the council shows it all too. They're a bunch of cocky shit sitting in that half circle that doesn't want to listen to anybody else. So, yeah.
True.
Yeah. They're arrogant. And it's their arrogance that was their downfall. They didn't see the Sith coming. They couldn't even sense the Sith because they were so sure that they were gone.
They got too complacent in the way things had been.
Yeah, I think they were convinced of their own superiority, and that's how the Sith managed to work their way back in.
Yeah. So my next two notes, let me give one note. Darth Maul looks badass.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah. And then my next couple of notes are Jar Jar related. So here's what I wrote. Interactions with Jar Jar are sometimes a bit stiff. Actors seem to be grappling with a new way of performing opposite invisible characters. That seemed really obvious with eye lines.
Yeah, they couldn't figure out where where they were looking.
Yeah, definitely having trouble.
Especially was one of the worst.
She's never looking in the right spot.
Never looking in the right spot. When she's handing the orb,
go to the very last, the orb, she's just standing straight forward the whole time. Doesn't look up at his face or anything. She's just completely stiff.
Nope, drives me crazy. Yeah.
The other note here says, this gets into a couple of my issues with the Phantom Menace being a kid's film more so than any of the rest. Jar Jar steps in poodoo.
Yep.
My 9-year-old nephew cries to me, "Help me."
Boy, that kid's got his head screwed on straight, huh?
He looked at me and goes, "Help me."
Did he really?
I was like, "What?" Yeah, I go, "What? You don't like that he stepped in poodoo?" He goes, "What the hell is poodoo?" I said, "Bantha poodoo. It's poop." He goes, "How do you know that?" I'm like, I just watched the movie. Anakin is 9 years old. WTF! Exclamation mark. I write, quote, "I'm a pilot all my life." End quote.
Yeah. That's ridiculous.
So I turned to Sean, who's 9, and I said, "Hey, look, Anakin's your age. Like, isn't that kind of cool?" Sean goes, "Eh."
Love Sean.
I go, "Okay."
Oh, he's so funny.
And then we're introduced to what is arguably one of my favorite characters in the prequel trilogy, Watto.
That's
because you're racist. That's the problem.
What?
That's because you're racist. That's why you love him.
I'm racist for liking Watto?
You must be, because Watto takes every single awful stereotype. He's Watto represents the worst possible characteristics of every minority, and they just put him into one toydarian.
He's the Cholo.
That said, I also like Watto, so I must be racist. He is.
I viewed him as like the tough guy Italian in like Brooklyn. Don't mess with me. Anyway,
okay.
I like Watto, and I find Watto a very interesting character because he does eventually just fucking lose everything, and I think it's an interesting character journey. It's one of the few characters that has a character journey throughout the Star Wars prequels. But we'll get
it again. You'll see it. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll get more onto that later. Plus, he is manipulated by Qui-Gon Jinn in this movie every step of the way.
Without using Jedi power, mind trick, which is fun.
Without using the mind trick, but Qui-Gon's the most dishonest Jedi I've ever met.
So true.
And I've got boatloads of notes here, but I'm just going to skip ahead to these notes because
he was very defiant.
Qui-Gon manipulates the chance cube to get the outcome in his own favor. Does he not trust in the Force to do what the Force needs? He's got to manipulate the chance cube. Its very name is chance. He messes with it. I mean, that seems really shady. And then he further pushes. I mean, he's constantly pushing Watto to. He dives in with Anakin's lie, for one, that it's his pod racer. Right? So, Anakin's manipulative at 9 years old, and Qui-Gon doesn't teach him a lesson that lying is bad. He goes, "That's a great idea, kid. Let's do it." Qui-Gon's look. I could be off base here. I don't know, but it seems like he's not a very good role model for Obi-Wan. And my take on it is Obi-Wan becomes such a straight square because he's trying to compensate for his manipulative father figure who he's embarrassed about. That's my take.
If Qui-Gon had been able to train Anakin to Jedihood instead of Obi-Wan, would things have been different? I mean, would Anakin become? Who knows?
I literally said the same thing at the when we finished watching. I'm like, I wonder what would have happened if Qui-Gon actually got to train.
I think if Qui-Gon had trained Anakin, they'd have taken over the Emperor before he became the Emperor, and then they would have taken over the universe together. Those lying, manipulative pair of them.
Dave's been
always two. There are.
Sounds like Jordan now.
Which I think you're right. Either that, or maybe he would have, like Obi-Wan, sort of tried to rebel against it and say, "Hey, look, let me go the right way." Although I can't imagine, because Anakin's always kind of gone his own way, So
look, Qui-Gon was like, "I'm going to train the boy. You guys don't want to train the boy. I'm going to take him as my Padawan." Yoda's like, "What? You already have a Padawan. I'm done with him. He's finished." Even Obi-Wan's like, "Wait, what? You're just throwing me aside for this?"
Yeah,
desert rat. Like,
well, my favorite is Qui-Gon gives like this backhand.
Qui-Gon got a streak in him, man.
Gave like this backhanded. He still has lots to learn. He still but I can't do anything more with him. It's like,
yeah, Qui-Gon's an a-hole. Qui-Gon has been very unfair to Obi-Wan from the beginning.
Yeah. I don't think Qui-Gon was as good a person as I remembered him to be. Like, looking back on him now, I'm like, oh, what a
dick.
Ass. Just an ass. Across the board. The council's like, we don't like this kid. He's dangerous. Think of how much better off the entire Star Wars universe would have been if the council had been heeded by that rebellious, rambunctious Jedi Qui-Gon Jinn.
Yep.
Yeah, it's true.
Okay, I'm off my box. I apologize. I'm sorry.
I like it. I like when David gets heated up. Look at David being passionate. I like it.
I really dug that Anakin could speak multiple languages, though, and I thought Jake Lloyd's performances were way better in Huttese and Toydarian. Just putting that out there.
Huh, that's a good point.
Naked 3PO I think is funny. Anybody else think Naked 3PO is funny?
Absolutely. Wobbly leg.
Yeah, I like him.
Yeah, like he's got no exoskeleton, so he's like, ooh.
and they give him a flag, to big ass flag to walk the parade.
Can I ask you this though? I mean, here's the thing: is like, I made a protocol droid for Mom to help out. Really, a protocol droid? Does she see a lot of dignitaries there at their slave quarters? Come on, make any other droid. Well, not an astromech, but what is he going to do? He speaks, Well, okay, maybe the languages. You know what? I haven't thought this through to its natural conclusion. I'm way off. I get everything I just said.
Well, I imagine that a protocol droid is capable of making the bed, cleaning the dishes.
Well, go back to the beginning of the movie. You had a protocol droid is the one that brought the tea and the drinks to the Jedi as they were waiting for the Viceroys. So they're
true.
Seems far more capable than an astromech doing the same thing in a sail barge. I don't know. Maybe I'm just.
The R2-D2 needs attachments to bring you drinks. It's terrible.
Again, you're also on Tatooine, which is like you have every sort of race alien out there, so they're going to have all these different languages. And
so having one that can speak
and moisture evaporators.
Yeah. Ooh, he said moisture.
That's true. He had to program binary load lifters.
I can say the long word. I can't say the short one.
No, you're right. I didn't think about all the languages, but yeah, I mean, it's an international spaceport, or intergalactic spaceport. So for them, it makes sense for her to be able to translate and talk to people, especially if she's going to have to take Anakin's duties at the store. Ugh. Poor lady. Sounds terrible.
And this is something that I've pointed out to Last Jedi haters a few times. Anakin refers to it as a laser sword in this film. Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. George Lucas wrote those lines. Laser sword. Is that your laser sword? That's the weapon of a Jedi. There
How creepy is Qui-Gon? He's like, well, maybe I killed a Jedi. Holy crap. This kid's 9. Tone it down.
Qui-Gon's an ass!
Well, he gets even creepy. Even Anakin's like, hey, what are you doing, weirdo? And he's like, oh, I'm making sure there's no infection. And even after he checks it, the moms, they're like, oh, Jesus, these guys are staying in my house, looking at him, stealing my kid's blood. He's creepy. He's a creepy man.
that was the other note. Yeah, Qui-Gon stealing the kid's blood without any permission, like whatsoever.
Right.
Like test this kid's blood. Why
are you taking a snippet of my hair? Well, I have to bake it into a pie. Okay, whatever you say, Jedi.
Yeah, Jedi seem to lie very easily if you watch this movie the first time. Which, like, they're supposed to be the good guys. And we watch this Jedi, who's the primary Jedi of this film, lie and manipulate all the way through the film to get what he wants.
Yeah.
That doesn't seem very... That's not how the Force works.
That said, I got to tell you this, though, because I used to think to myself, well, there's not much to Qui-Gon. His methods are unorthodox. But, that said, I like him more this time around. And I saw it, and I'm like, there is a character to the guy. I don't agree with everything he does, but I do like that he goes his own way, and he's a little reckless. He's almost like the Han Solo of Jedi,
Mm. Okay.
I guess I'm alone in this one.
Yeah, you stand there solo, if you will.
Nicely done.
Obi-Wan even says it, like, if you would just listen and like agree with the rest of the council, you'd be on it. But you just don't do that.
Yeah. Master, if you didn't steal kids' blood, you'd be on the council, but you just can't stop being creepy. What are you going to do?
So the question there is was Qui-Gon on the path to the dark side that whole time?
I think so, because watching this one, I thought to myself, you know what? He would have joined Dooku for sure. If Dooku had made the pitch that he made to Obi-Wan, to Qui-Gon would have said, you know what? You might be right. Let's explore Confederacy.
Now, am I correct?
I think so.
Qui-Gon was Dooku's Padawan, wasn't he?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And there's a part where Dooku tells Obi-Wan, I wish Qui-Gon were here. I could really use his help. And Obi-Wan says, Qui-Gon would have never helped you. And at first I was like, yeah, he wouldn't have. But watching it this time around, I think to myself, I don't know, because Obi-Wan's been wrong about stuff before, and Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon, they're two very separate people. And Qui-Gon seems to play it faster and looser. I think he would have at least heard Dooku out.
Yeah, I think you're right. Very interesting.
Well, he has it so much in his head that Anakin is the chosen one. Like, it's an absolute.
Yeah.
Which is the Sith way of life. Right? Exactly. That's why I worded it like that. But
ooh, good point.
But he just really firmly believes that this is the right kid. So I don't know.
Well, getting to the blood thing and the kid being the chosen one, midi fucking chlorians.
Oh God.
Let's just not go there. And
I like how it's done in this one film, and then nope. Just, all right, we just
okay. I'm gonna get into rumor territory here for just a moment. Okay, the rumors I read around are that the treatments that Lucas gave to Disney for 7, 8, and 9 were going to go into the microscopic world and explore the wills, which are microscopic creatures that control the life of the universe. The midichlorians are my proof that rumor is probably true.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. The moment he said going into the microscopic universe, I said midichlorians. That's why he set it up.
Yeah, and thank God we didn't get that in the sequel trilogy, or Star Wars would truly be dead. I honestly believe that. Okay, so going on. Boonta Eve. Pod racing is fun.
Yep.
Is it though? Does anybody think it went on too long?
Hold on. Let's not get into pocket. I forgot one thing. The Immaculate Force conception.
Okay.
Oh, right.
Oh!
I hated that. I hated that when it came out in the films 20 years ago. I like, why do we have to go there? Why do we have to confuse this whole storyline with Jesus? It's
right.
Touchy subject to go on.
Also, it should be noted It should be noted that Prunella August, the lady who played Shmi Skywalker, later played the Virgin Mary in the Jesus film. How many times are you going to play that character, lady? Let's get some range. Jesus.
Now, that said, a recent comic book, Star Wars comic book that is canon, came out and retconned Shmi's conception as Palpatine manipulating the Force within her to create Anakin. So that brings my question of, does that make Anakin related to Papa Palpatine? Go.
I thought that was going to be the big revelation in episode 3. I thought the revelation was going to be, I am your father. From Palpatine to what's his name? I think so.
I am your grandfather.
I am the guy who manipulated this bullshit midichlorians that shouldn't exist in order to make you. So
I am your godfather.
So did you read that comic or like?
I've seen the frames, the last 2 pages of that issue.
So was she strong in the? Why pick her? Like, was she strong in the Force too?
I don't know why she was picked. I didn't read the whole comic. I just saw that ending where they're like, "Oh my God, look, Palpatine totally created Anakin within Shmi." Now the question then is that's canon now. The question is if he did it with Shmi, was he doing that all over the place, creating little Anakins all over the galaxy, so that he'd have strong, Force-sensitive future apprentices?
Wow, that's a good question. That's a great question.
So then that gets into the whole thing with Last Jedi and the questions about Rey and does she matter, or this kid with the broom on the casino planet, who's really Force sensitive. Like, is there a whole lineage of super Force sensitive people that were created by Palpatine?
A whole race of chosen ones. It makes sense because what are the odds that they're going to find the chosen one, right? But it would make sense if there's so many chosen ones scattered around. Yeah, they found one of them, and this one turned out to be flawed, but there literally could have been tons of them. And
if that's the case, does that mean Anakin isn't in fact the chosen one? Contrary to everybody's belief.
I wonder the same thing myself, because later, some people think Luke is the chosen one. Some people think Rey is the chosen one. Who knows at this point, honestly?
You gotta love prophecy.
Prophecy, it's always so vague.
So pod racing. Before we get into the race itself, do we need another Poodoo joke here? Really?
I never understood why that was thrown in there.
Why does the cow thing got a fart in Jar Jar's face? Look, I'm all for humor, but stupid. I mean, toilet humor twice in this movie? I mean, kids are more grown up than that. Give me a break.
It devolved into an episode of Married with Children. Horrible.
Yeah, so it happens.
Terrible.
It happens. It happens, and Sean looks at me and goes, "Really?" So,
that's hilarious. I don't know. Did you guys like the pod racing scene? Did you think it was? Did you think it was necessary for it to go on as long as it did?
I think there had been so little actual action in this movie up to this point that it was nice to have something exhilarating. And I do remember that in the movie theater that first night, because by the time we got to here, most of us were feeling a little disappointed in what we were seeing. We were a little overwhelmed by all the CG because we'd never seen anything like that before. But this was like, oh, wow, something fast and exhilarating and Star Wars, like motors and spaceship-ish type stuff, like, but it does drag on a bit, and I don't know, maybe because I am getting older, I'm not as enamored with the characters as I was back then. I really liked the two-headed announcer guy when I was younger. I don't care much for him now. Although I did notice for the first time that one of them speaks Basic, the other one speaks some other language.
You never picked that up?
I never really picked that up before. Don't know why, but I picked up on it today. But that is the thing. Like, there's so much to absorb in these films. Like, every time I watch, I do see something new. So there's, again, getting to the animators and all the things that they're doing in the background of stuff. I mean, gosh, if you try to focus in on the people in the crowd, there's so many races and characters to see in the crowds. Like, that alone will spin your head.
Yeah.
But whether the pod racing scene goes on too long or not, it is still visually top-notch visual effects work.
Yep, absolutely.
Even to this day. And I actually watched a visual effects breakdown from some VFX guys on YouTube a couple months ago. The guy sat down and said, we're going to watch the pod racing scene and see how it holds up. And these guys are guys who are working on the current Marvel films and DC films and Avatar and whatnot. Like, these are the guys who are in the thick of visual effects today, watching this movie from 20 years ago. And the whole way through, they're like, man, this stuff is really outstanding. Little things like the way the shadows move. Like, so you got the ground moving real fast underneath the pods, but the shadows are actually going up and down and being
bigger, smaller, and stuff.
They're mapping themselves on the ground, and they're like 20 years ago.
Cool.
The fact that they were doing that with the shadows, they're like, there are films we watch today that aren't taking that kind of level of detail. Like these guys blew it out of the park on this whole sequence.
Yeah.
And that, to me, I think is why it's so long. And it's been one of my critiques of Lucas on the prequels all the way to the end, but especially in Attack of the Clones. He sacrifices storytelling time for visual effects time.
Yeah.
You see it continually in the prequels. He will, especially when I got the DVD set and they showed some deleted scenes from like Attack of the Clones. And we'll talk about that on the Attack of the Clones bit. But like, there are scenes with Anakin and Padme on Naboo, like learning more about each other and him learning about her family and stuff that were cut in favor of keeping longer sequences on Geonosis. So you could see the what is it? The droid factory or whatever.
Yeah.
All that cat and mouse or rat, mousetrap stuff that has literally no impact on the story at all. But it's a showcase for what the visual effects team could do. I say it over and over again. Lucas's primary focus with the prequels was moving digital filmmaking forward, not making the best Star Wars movies that he could. That's my thought.
I think you're right.
But yeah, I think it's fun. I like that it's like a chariot race.
Right.
Like a future style chariot race, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, it's Ben-Hur.
Yeah. Mixed in with a little bit of like American street racing, let's see here. Okay, so let's start moving away from Tatooine. Anakin being cold on the ship, I thought was a cool touch.
Yeah.
It's like, a kid who grew up on a freaking desert planet would be freezing in an air-conditioned spaceship. Padme caring for Anakin, as she says, is weird.
Yeah.
She says we'll be on Coruscant soon, and but don't worry, I'll always care for you the way I do now. Really? Like, she didn't say squat to him out after the shop when he called her an angel. The rest of the time she just spent bickering with Qui-Gon, who, by the way, couldn't tell that she was queen.
No, he did.
I don't buy it. I think he knew the whole time.
He knew.
Yeah.
He knew.
You think so?
Yeah, when he turned back and when she said the queen would never agree to this.
He says the queen trusts me and so should you.
He says the queen's not here and she should trust me, so should you. But then he gave a smart look back at her. Kind of like, are you going to break your character? He was calling her out.
I don't know. I don't know if it was ever decided by those actors or by the director whether or not Qui-Gon actually knew what was going on. Because when you flash forward later and Padme reveals herself, Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon look at each other like,
no,
whoa.
They don't. They look at each other like, yeah, we knew that.
Well, I think Obi-Wan didn't know because Obi-Wan does look more surprised, but Qui-Gon only smiles slyly. I think Qui-Gon did know.
Absolutely.
All right. Okay. I still think the whole decoy thing is just weird.
It's weird. It doesn't make any sense.
It's smart, though. I mean, I get it.
Sure, yeah. When you're walking in public places from one place to another, but like in the depths of your throne chamber on your own ship, the fuck is that?
Yeah.
I mean, I get why Saddam Hussein did it. I don't understand why.
I mean, that's Christian Bale Batman levels of insanity talking to Alfred. We've gotten into that before. Coruscant looked amazing. Still looks amazing, I think.
No, it was incredible.
The sheer scale of the idea that you've got a whole planet that's a city. And it's a cityscape that just goes on forever. And the rows and rows of traffic in the sky, like just really cool,
me of the Jetsons.
Yeah. No, they really pulled it off because Coruscant, it's funny, Coruscant came from the books. Timothy Zahn created Coruscant for the Thrawn trilogy.
Yep.
And so I wondered, I said, well, are they going to show Coruscant? And they did, but George Lucas managed to really, or maybe it was a visual effects artist, maybe it was the art department, I don't know who, but they really made Coruscant a place. It wasn't just an urban metropolis. I mean, it had a feel. It had a weird Art Deco. I loved that city. It felt so real and so alive and so beautiful to me.
Yeah, and it just gets better throughout the prequels.
Oh, yeah.
More colorful and more, I mean, just more and more interesting each film. Obi-Wan says, as Theresa pointed out, do not defy the council, not again. Qui-Gon has a hell of a rebellious streak, my note says.
Yep.
And also, this is where we hear Yoda say, I sense much fear in you, which immediately brought the Theresa, close your ears real quick. Seriously, close your ears real quick. This brings in the Revenge or the Rise of Skywalker trailer, where we hear Luke's voice say, it is the destiny of all Jedi to confront fear. I just thought, oh, wow, how beautiful to take what is now the first movie of the series, have this line, I sense much fear in you, and it's why they don't want to train Anakin.
Right.
They're fearful of the fact that he's got fear in him, because fear leads to hate, hate leads to anger, anger leads to suffering. But you go all the way to episode 9, and in the trailers, they're saying it is the destiny of all Jedi to face fear. And this is from the character who... This is from the character who ran away from it when we find him in episode 8.
That's interesting. So not only has his character come full circle, but the story itself has come full circle.
Yep. Okay, I'm going to tell Theresa to put... She can come back on. She's putting her headphones back on. Theresa has made a decided effort to stay spoiler free on Rise of Skywalker.
I have done it every Star Wars movie. I watched the first trailer.
I like it.
So, This is also when we start to see Palpatine, actual Palpatine, not the
Emperor.
not the Sith Lord.
Right.
So this is Senator Palpatine, smiling and kissing babies Palpatine. Right?
Shaking hands, Palpatine. But I love him because he's just you get the impression he's a snake, but he's so good at being a snake. Oh,
totally manipulating his way to power. And I love the scene in Padme's chambers where he's telling her, the bureaucrats have taken control and the chancellor's not strong enough to stand against it. And then, he keeps kind of telling her this over and over. And then he sits down next to her and says, I think it would be good if someone called for a vote of no confidence. And she's like, he's been our biggest supporter. he's like, well, then, and he walks off and he gives her this look at the end where he's like, I've got you. My hooks are in you.
Yeah. He's so smart. He even says, the Supreme Chancellor has been mired by baseless accusations of corruption.
Wonder where those have come from.
Yeah, I love him. I love him because he's such a rat. I mean, he appears to be defending him while clearly laying the groundwork for her to start doubting this guy. I love that they ate. He's so good.
I love later on when Padme decides to go back to Naboo, and it's this, oh no, please don't go. it's so, I say it, but I'm not actually I don't really care. Sorry, buddy.
Well, I think it's interesting because she leaves, right?
Yeah.
And he knows she's left to gone back, right? Yeah. and when she gets there, she doesn't go straight to Theed. She ends up going to the Gungans, right? And when he's being told this by the Trade Federation guys, he goes, it's an unusual move for her. It's too aggressive.
Right.
Right? Wow. Anybody really paying attention would be like, how do you know what's aggressive or not for her?
Yeah, he might as well said, earlier today in my apartment, never mind, it's not important. But is it just me? Did anybody else notice that
her ship got through the blockade really easy?
Yes,
that too. But as she's leaving Palpatine's apartment, and the last shot is Palpatine, right? As the image wipes up, just before they cut away from his face, it almost looks like he's about to smile. Is that just me? I love that. It's so subtle. I don't even know if I saw it. Oh, what a performance from that guy.
Yeah, Ian McDiarmid is brilliant in this
man's
part.
A treasure.
And I'm telling you, he didn't need directing. And if he got any directing from Lucas, he just ignored it and did his thing.
And rightly so.
And I think he loves playing this character. I mean, when he walked out on stage at Celebration back in April to say one line, roll it again. You could see this guy just loves playing this part.
Yeah.
So, I mean, good on him. I'm glad he's been able to play this character for so long.
Right.
Me too. He's the one flawless part of the prequels.
Yeah.
Wow. This movie. Let's not go nuts.
My next note reads, after getting through the blockade too easily, Portman's plea to the Gungans is so emotionless. It's just flat out terrible acting. Because she says, what is it? She says, I ask you. No, I beg you. And she drops to her knees she's like a damn robot. It's the worst bit of acting she's ever done. Ever. It's terrible. Absolutely terrible. And granted, she was 17, but I know she's capable of more because she'd already done the professional. And then right after that is the talk of the battle plans, where they're standing around talking about the battle plans, and I immediately flash back to the honest trailers for this movie. Standing and talking, sitting and talking, walking and talking, sitting in a floating thing while walking and talking. Which is so why the pod race was so great, because at least something was happening. The shot of the Gungan army coming out of the fog is still awesome.
Oh, it's beautiful.
I don't care
That's
who you
what they
are.
opened the trailer with.
Yeah. And I remember looking at that going, whoa.
Yeah, it was incredible.
Yeah. Beautiful, beautiful visuals. What do you think of the battle? Gungans versus the droid army. It's like the classic, nature versus tech kind of situation, right? Tribe versus advanced weaponry kind of deal. Although the Gungans arguably have some advanced weaponry, though they're using catapults. It's a mixed metaphor with them. I don't know. I think I loved it when I saw it originally, but I was thoroughly unimpressed watching it today.
It wasn't bad. I mean, I love the soundtrack during that part.
Oh no! John Williams is a fucking treasure.
This entire movie, well, all Star Wars, but this movie was Duel of the Fates is still bar none. Yeah, the soundtrack for this setting up was great. It just turns into Jar Jar's stupid show.
Although I want to point out that the rest of the Gungans seem fairly capable.
Absolutely.
But somehow Jar Jar's like the epitome of failing upward.
Yeah, like if you actually would have maybe cut to more scenes of like actual Gungans doing well and then go back, it wouldn't have been as bad, but it just didn't really show a lot of that.
Yeah.
Well, I don't like when Jar Jar, as general, is telling them to be steady. Oh, relax, guy. Boy, the power really went to your head in the last 10 minutes, huh? I hate that. Because these guys how do they respect them? Don't they turn around and be like, aren't you the dude we banished and then tried to kill last week?
Yeah, talk about the big turnaround. We're gonna make you a bomb bad general. I'm like, really?
Yeah, why? Boss Nass has got to be the worst ruler ever then. Ugh.
He drools a lot.
Yeah. This battle, though, I mean, it looked like a video game cutscene, and it looked like a cutscene from not a particularly good video game. You know what I mean? Like, it's just.
I think this is where you run into the CG character versus CG character. There's no humanity in it anywhere.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's entirely generated. And it feels like a cartoon. Looking at it now, It feels like a cartoon. It was very advanced visually at the time, and I remember thinking at the time, like, oh my God, this is amazing. It looks so real. But watching it today, it felt like watching a cartoon, like you said, like a video game cutscene. I think we've gotten to a point where video game cutscenes look better than this sequence in this movie. For me, it's the one time where things kind of fall apart and the visual effects kind of call out that they are visual effects.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, real quick, going back to John Williams for a second, I want to point something out, something that I noticed when I first saw the film 20 years ago. The theme song to the Trade Federation is 2 or 3 notes off from the theme song to the Nazis in Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. Did anybody else notice that?
There's a lot of similarity. It's true.
I love it, though. I mean, I'm not complaining. They're good themes. Why not recycle them a little bit? You just change 1 or 2 notes, but they still hold up. It's sinister, Space Hitler.
Okay. So the droid Gungan battle is kind of like the setup for a long-running Star Wars trope. Blasters versus lightsabers, civilized versus uncivilized. But then Anakin manages to... Okay, look. There's been a lot of bitching and moaning about Rey being a Mary Sue. Right? She's just capable of doing anything right off the bat. Anakin's fucking 9 years old and hops into a Naboo fighter a planet whose language he doesn't know how to read, and manages to figure out how to fly a fighter at 9, kill a bunch of droidicas with it, and then fly up and battle the Trade Federation in space where he's never flown before. Who's a Mary Sue? I'm just saying.
I mean, he's been flying his entire life. He said it.
Although we saw that was a lie because Rick Ollier gives him a quick, he's like, oh, this does this and this does that. And he's like, oh, you catch on pretty quick. And when I was watching yesterday, I go, nice try, George Lucas. This doesn't fix any of that. Oh, so somebody, if I go into a cockpit as a 9-year-old and the captain's like, hey, so this steers the 747, great. I can't then fly my own 747. That's not how that works.
Yeah. Look, I can drive a truck. It doesn't mean I can fly a Cessna.
Right.
Yeah, it's silly.
The basic components are the same-ish, but I can't do it.
Yeah, it didn't hold up to me. It never made sense then. It doesn't make sense now.
So I just want to say, Mary Sues are part of the Star Wars fabric. Deal with it. Obi-Wan watching Qui-Gon lose to Maul is heartbreaking.
Let's just talk about the entire
that whole fight.
Awesome. What I wanted.
Yeah, it's amazing
for any sort of sword battle, even Star Wars, any action film period. Like this was.
Oh, that was awesome.
And when I saw it at the time, the best sword battle I'd seen ever. Period.
Yeah. The idea of a double-bladed lightsaber was like
awesome,
mind-boggling.
Seriously.
I played with lightsabers all growing up. I never thought of like connecting two of them together and swinging it around. It's like, oh my gosh, a bow staff lightsaber. Like, what the hell?
And how perfect was, I know we already mentioned the Duels of Fates is a fantastic theme song, but it's such a grandiose piece of music for such a grandiose fight because that fight is on such a large scale that it was perfect. It was just perfect.
Yeah, perfect-ish. Yes.
My main thing was always when they fell down the different tiers of the walkways.
The high ground.
They, just kind of brush it off. Like, you just fell 40 feet on your back.
The high ground.
That's one complaint I've got. The second complaint I've got is that we'll get to that later.
It's a good point.
The second complaint I've got is that very video game-esque power coupling hallway. Which makes me flash forward to Galaxy Quest when they're trying.
Why is this even here?
Why is this even here? This is bad writing. But it's the mousetrap stuff. Like Lucas kept writing in mousetrap things like that, and it wasn't necessary. Other than to try and figure out how to separate Obi-Wan from Qui-Gon, but I think there's other ways they could have done that. Especially after Obi-Wan fell down to a different tier. Like, that whole sequence could have happened on separate tiers. It didn't have to be done the way it was. I think it detracts from it. It just feels forced to me because Qui-Gon and Darth Maul are full on battling and casually walking down that hallway. Right. And they get almost all the way through it. Obi-Wan's at a full freaking sprint and can't make it through. Like it after the super speed earlier in the movie. Like it. Look, I
did this once when this movie first came out on DVD, and I actually timed it. The timing difference between the two completely different.
Completely different. Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. So that always pulls me out of it. Even the first time I watched it, that little bit pulled me out of it. I was willing to kind of overlook it when I was younger, but as an older filmmaker now, I look at it and I call bullshit, and it pisses me off because there were other ways to handle that would have made way more sense and still would have had the emotional impact that you would have wanted. That said, Ewan McGregor is a fantastic actor, and with just a simple no, breaks my heart to watch Obi-Wan watch Qui-Gon die. Qui-Gon's an ass, but he doesn't deserve that. And then I'm thoroughly convinced, again, watching this today, that Ewan McGregor's best acting moments are holding his co-stars as they die in his arms.
Oh yes, absolutely. That man can sell somebody dying in his arms like nobody else.
Mm-hmm.
I cry every time in each of his movies that he does that. It just kills me every time.
Oh yeah, Moulin Rouge, forget it.
Yeah,
oh my god,
forget about it. Oh no,
I'm a blubbering mess every time Satine dies in his arms when I watch it. Anyway, love Obi-Wan.
Even when he's holding Maul years later.
Yeah.
I mean, I kind of feel for Maul. I'm like, Jesus. Anyway, okay, yeah.
Let me see here. Oh, and then the emotional impact of him crying, holding Qui-Gon, watching Qui-Gon die. The emotional impact is completely taken away by cutting straight to the Gungan surrender. We should give up.
Made me so angry.
Yeah, really ticked me off, because that wasn't necessary at all either. You could have done the Gungan surrender right before that, and this is the editor in me. You could have done the comedy bit right before that, then Qui-Gon dying, then go to Padme making her way into taking over the throne room. Just my thought. And I also wrote here, Obi-Wan, greatest lightsaber dueler of a generation, my unpopular opinion.
Your unpopular opinion?
Yeah, because in all the books and stuff, he's talked about as one of the best defensive lightsaber practitioners. I don't know what the word is. But he's never referred to as one of the best duelers ever. But he's
defensive, the guy I can see for sure.
He's the guy who took down Darth Maul. He's the guy who took down Anakin Skywalker. Come on.
Yeah, defensive, yeah, because when he goes up against Darth Vader for the last time, I mean, he's holding his own as far as defense, but he knows he can never take Darth Vader down.
Not at that point.
Sure.
Not at that point. Vader's got a protective suit on and, isn't old like him because of the added cyber strength, Yeah. But when Obi-Wan took on Darth Maul again in Rebels, like, it was no contest.
It was amazing.
By the way, super excited for the Obi-Wan show coming to Disney Plus.
Yes.
Ewan let it slip this week in an interview that is going to be 6 episodes.
Yep. 6-hour-long episodes.
Yep.
It's going to be amazing.
So essentially...
And I don't think that man slipped on anything. That man was kept secret for 4 years.
Yeah, it came out in the same interview. They've been actively pursuing this Obi-Wan project for 4 years, and he's been keeping it under wraps that whole time, which is why when he came out on stage with Kathleen Kennedy, the first thing he said, ask me the question. She goes, are you going to play Obi-Wan Kenobi again? He goes, yes.
I finally get to do that.
I finally get to say that, because for 4 years he's been playing coy, like, I don't know, nobody's talked to me, So kudos to him, and I love that he's back, because it's so obvious he wants to do it.
Yeah,
and that to me, as much as anything, is everything. The fact that he wants to come back and do it because he loves the fans, he loves the part, he loves the character, and he wants to do it justice. And I think he sees the opportunity to do a bit more than he was able to do in the prequels. So, okay. So Sean wasn't super enamored about Anakin being 9. That said, when Anakin's in the Naboo fighter and he screams out, "Now this is pod racing," Sean turned to me and beamed the biggest smile on his face, because he was totally into that moment. And that's when he, like, I said, are you liking that Anakin's 9? And he goes, yeah. So at that moment, he was digging that Anakin's the same age as him. So
at that moment, Anakin actually sounded like a kid.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah. So then the final scene is the funeral pyre. For me, that's the final scene. The big celebration in the streets is fine, but it's obviously trying to just capture the magic of the medallion ceremony from New Hope. But the funeral pyre scene where Obi-Wan says, I'm going to train you, and you have the conversation between Mace Windu and Yoda about the fact that the Sith are back. Always two there are, a master and apprentice. But which one was he, the master or the apprentice? They don't know. It's very clear that the Jedi are lost because the master is in that room with them right there, and they have no idea. Hence the title, The Phantom Menace.
Actually put
I loved
that together.
Palpatine is the Phantom Menace.
Did you say you don't think you actually put that together?
No, yeah.
So I don't know. I like that it was a funeral pyre, although every time I watch funeral pyres in any movie like that, I go, God, that must just smell terrible.
Yeah.
And what a bizarre way to watch your friend go away.
Yeah, it's gross.
That said, I did, attend to them putting my mom in the oven. So,
yep.
But the door closed, so we didn't. Anyway,
yeah.
What are your guys' final verdicts on The Phantom Menace 20 years after its release? Mike, let's start with you. What's your, final thoughts on the film?
Still good. Obviously, it comes down to the battle scenes for me and the lightsaber battle. I said it before. Like, this is what you've always wanted to see in Star Wars. You go back to the originals, and the moving is clunky and slow. There's definitely slow parts, but at the same time, you are definitely setting up the trilogy, which, they've got the backstory you got to kind of do. Because, you go on to 2 and 3, and it's not nearly as... There's arguably slow parts, but not nearly as much as of the overall film. I'd give it a good 7 out of 10.
Okay. Theresa.
Yep.
Thoughts? Teresa's like, oh my God, you made me watch that piece of turd again.
I'm trying to... So watching it again was interesting. I mean, I've watched it several times over the years because of the nephews and stuff like that, so it's not like it's been that long since I've watched it. But I'm still amazed how watching it, just how bad a good part of it was, But at the same time, and I make these arguments all the time, it's not like the originals were spectacular either. So,
Bite your tongue, Theresa.
No, you shush.
Jordan, you're going to love it when we get to the original trilogy.
Oh, you wait till I get going, Jordan. I'm going to flip your world. This is how this is going to work. But
I better brace myself.
But I mean, for what it was and what it needed to be, it did the job. It got it going. And yeah, I'm with Mikey. I wanted a lightsaber duel that wasn't just waving the light sticks in front of somebody's face, So to get that and get the spectacularness of what it was, I'm happy. Like that's all I needed. That's what I needed in the movie, and so that's what I got. Yeah. Are there storyline, plot holes, acting terrible. Yes, absolutely. But every Star Wars film has those. Like, that's part of the universe. Part of the Star Wars universe is the bad stories and the bad acting and not always making sense. That is the universe. So once you take all that out, the movie was great. I mean,
wow. What an indictment. I love it. That's hilarious.
Okay.
And you had my Ewan McGregor, so of course it's spectacular.
Yeah, she'll pretty much watch anything with Ewan McGregor in it.
Yep.
Speaking of which, Dr. Sleep comes out in about a week and a half.
Looking forward to it.
Jordan, your thoughts on The Phantom Menace?
When I first saw the film, I wanted to like it a lot, and I couldn't. I saw it with my whole family on vacation, and I could tell they were weirded out. And so they all turned to me, and I said, yeah, it was great, because I didn't want them to know how disappointed I was. That said, watching it again 20 years later, this is one of the first times I watched it and didn't try to remember, all the emotions I felt when I watched it. I just watched it as a film. The visual effects don't hold up, but I kind of appreciate the music more than ever. Some of the things do hold up. I love Palpatine still. Darth Maul certainly holds up. And then I found myself appreciating things I didn't appreciate before, like the Queen's wardrobe. For the most part, it was absolutely fantastic, except for that one scene on Coruscant where she's talking to Jar Jar. She's looking out the window. She looks like Liz Taylor from the 80s. And that was a little too much. Like, you know what? Show some decency. Your people are dying. You're over here getting dressed up like a White Diamonds commercial. But that said, a lot of it was fantastic. The music, again, still beautiful. And so, I don't know. I guess if I take it as part of a whole, then I can say, okay, this is an adventure that's maybe a little more interesting and I can appreciate on a couple more levels. As the movie that people have been waiting for 15 years, 20 years, no, it's not that great. But I don't know. I mean, I guess as an older guy, I can appreciate it a little more now. That said, I still give it about a 3.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it goes back to what kind of mentality you go into these movies, right? So when you were going into the prequels, if you were a lover of the originals, you had a certain expectation going into the prequels. So the prequels they didn't stand out. Yeah. But the new age of like Mikey's generation, the prequels aren't bad. They love them. They love them just like the generation above them loves the original. Yeah. And the same thing's going to go with the most current trilogy. It's the same sort of thing. So all the people, Mikey had a hard time going into Force Awakens and Last Jedi because it didn't, I think he hyped himself up so much to the point to where he was when David was trying to go into Phantom Menace and the prequels. The same sort of problem happens. So it causes issues in watching these movies. Yeah. Yeah. But they're all the same. They all have the same storylines.
True. It's execution.
Really?
And this
really?
Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, no, if you really go into it, they're the same movies.
And I get into this conversation with people all the time, is that there's a lot of Gen Xers who have memories of what A New Hope is that it really isn't.
Yeah.
And those memories are tainted by hundreds of hours of playing Star Wars and reading comics and filling in the gaps of A New Hope with our own imaginations, which were, look, when you're younger, your imagination can fill in gaps far more readily and easily than it does when you get older. It's just a fact, right? Well, we're more in touch with our imaginations when we're young. So when Obi-Wan talks about the Clone Wars in A New Hope, your brain goes all sorts of places and fills in these amazing gaps in that story. When he talks about the Force binding us and holding the galaxy together, a whole religion can sprout up in your mind instantaneously from very little information, right? And over time, you fill in that information on your own. You gather some of that information from additional things that came out in the 20 years since, but especially in those like 10 years right after the movies came out. And we fill in what these things mean to us, and it affects our memory of those movies. And A New Hope was something nobody had ever seen before when it came out. And Empire was an improvement even above that. And Jedi was then an expansion on the extravagance beyond that. Those movies were all the movies of a generation that made an impact. And for better or worse, as a Gen Xer, my memories of those, even though I was in the theater and I saw 2 of them in the theaters, and I grew up watching all 3 of them on video, it's my memory of that is not pure and never will be. I can't remember it exactly the way it was when I watched them. Mm-hmm. And even I realized that watching the Phantom Menace, I can kind of remember a little bit emotionally how I felt, but I want to say, looking back now, that I think I was disappointed in them, but tried to cover it up. Right? Or is that older me looking back going, no, you knew all along that this was bullshit and you just played it off? Or did I actually enjoy it at the time? I don't really know. I don't really know anymore how I felt when I watched this the first time. I know I remember feeling extremely excited for it coming out, and I continued to feel extremely excited watching more of them come out. And I think I will always be excited to see a Star Wars movie drop. It's just in my makeup. I love Star Wars. That said, I don't make any bones that it's Shakespeare either. And I look back at A New Hope, and I watch A New Hope, and I go, I love this movie, but it's really thin. And I watched The Phantom Menace today, and I go, this movie's great, but it's really thin. There's a lot of story here, but not a lot of story actually told. You see Palpatine being a senator. We fill in the gaps of what he's emotionally going through in those scenes. We don't have any scenes with Senator Palpatine where he talks about his motivations.
Yeah. I don't know what people complain.
Right? We see the Sith Lord doing what he does. We see the senator doing what he does, but we don't see the reconciliation of the duality of this person. How much of that do we fill in on our own? And how much is the enjoyment of the Star Wars storyline based on a person's ability to fill in gaps in the story on their own? That's what I've been coming to more and more. And been hearing a lot of the same sort of things. Sounds like Jordan's in his car. Sounds like but it sounds like a lot of the prequel stuff, or the new sequel trilogy, a lot of the same sort of things happening. People complain about not getting enough Snoke. Well, we didn't even see the Emperor in New Hope. And we only saw a hollow image of him in Empire. We didn't actually sit down for a meal, a big, tasty, juicy meal with the Emperor until Return of the Jedi. And then he was thrown over a chasm like a chump. People don't like that we didn't get a lot of Captain Phasma. Okay, well, she's the Boba Fett of the new sequel trilogy.
True, we got more of her than we got Boba.
People wanted to see tons of Boba Fett. Boba Fett gets thrown into a Sarlacc pit like a chump. This is Star Wars, and there are plenty of characters that show great promise on screen, but you fill in the gaps. Or you go to the extended peripheral materials of the comic books and the novelizations, of which there's tons, especially in the new stuff. They've completely started over on the novels. and completely started over with the comic books. And it's great. That stuff's really rich. And it improves your appreciation of the overall Star Wars universe. But I think the more you get into that, the harder it is to accept that the movies are pretty thin. I love the Star Wars universe. I love the potential of everything that can be told in the Star Wars universe. But I have said for many, many years now that the films are a gateway to the larger universe that you can experience. They're not the end all be all of the Star Wars universe.
You know what? I agree with you. And to that, I choose to take it as a whole then, because I love it. I love the story. I love the books. I love the video games. I love all of it. And you're right. I mean, it's like when people saw the movie Solo and people go, hey, when did Darth Maul come back? And the thing is, I get it, but it's such a vast universe with so many stories.
Yeah.
And that's how I choose to enjoy it. It's not for everybody, but it's definitely for me, you know?
Yeah. And I had a lot of people ask the same thing of me about Darth Maul and Solo. Like, I thought he died. Oh, yeah. But he came back as like this crazy cyborg spider creature. And then, you know, I mean, like there's a whole storyline with Darth Maul that if you didn't bother watching the animated series, you didn't bother watching Clone Wars or Rebels, like you've missed out on a really rich set of stories that were told about this character that had 5 minutes in Phantom Menace that everybody loved, but disappeared right away in the movies. But in the expanded storytelling that they do in Star Wars, there's a rich, rich story told on Darth Maul, his origins, his people's background, and they're really important in the expanded storytelling. You know, so it's a question of, you know, do you want to just be a popcorn fan? Enjoy the movies, take them for what they are. Don't look for anything more than what they are. If you want to dig deeper, you can. It's these people that want the films to be as thick and rich and deep as the rest of the stuff that can be told are, that are having, I think, the biggest issues with it.
Well, and we've talked about this before. It also depends on how old you are when you saw the movies.
Mm-hmm.
If you were a kid or a young teen, you don't really dissect movies like we do now at our ages. So if it's until a couple of years ago, if I was entertained in a movie, I was perfectly fine. If I had fun, that's it. I never looked at cinematography. I never looked at all that kinds of stuff. You know, I noticed it. Like, why does this look good? You know, music is probably like one of the things I would always notice about a movie. But like, you can tell bad acting, but you just, as long as you were entertained, you just let it slide by.
Yeah.
So, you know, when I saw the special editions of the original, they were fun. They were entertaining. Same thing with this. You go in, but you know, like I said, I think I was 15 when I saw Phantom Menace. But you know, I know I really enjoyed it when I watched it. I know I dissect it more now, and there's things I definitely just let pass as a 15-year-old. But as I got later on, by the time Revenge of the Sith came out, you know, 8 years after that or whatever it was, you know, you're just at that older age where you just notice those things more.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's the same thing we're going now to with the 8, 9, 10.
I think the thing that I'm really going to enjoy about doing this dissection of the films leading up to Rise of Skywalker is it's going to reset my expectations before we watch that movie.
Right.
Right. Like Theresa knows, I'll spoiler the hell out of things.
Yeah.
I don't care. It doesn't bother me. She won't watch the trailer that came out 2 weeks ago. That's fine. We come from completely different places. But
we also go into these movies with different expectations of the thing. I'm going into it. And the reason I do this is I do it this way because I don't want to have a pre-existing thought process of what the movie should be or what I'm hoping to get out of it because of what I saw in these trailers. So I want to try to go in with as as clean a slate as possible going into these movies. And maybe that's why I have pretty much enjoyed every single one that's come out.
Now, that said, I spoil the hell out of everything, and I did all the way back with Phantom Menace. I got as much information on it as I could ahead of time.
Oh, yeah.
I loved them when I watched them. I'm not one of those people who shits all over The Last Jedi. Like, I love The Last Jedi, right? I maybe I'm an apologist. I don't know, but I love Star Wars, just kind of across the board. I can also tell you where the flaws are.
Absolutely.
I'm not delusional about it.
Absolutely.
But I set my expectations. I know what Star Wars is, and I accept it for what it is. It's like, look, it's like the best relationship, right? You want to just accept your partner for all her flaws and still love her. And that's Star Wars.
Well, I mean, but that's what
love her.
Well, that's what I was saying though. That's what I was saying though, is it's Star Wars. Part of the Star Wars universe is the flaws. The flaws is what makes Star Wars Star Wars. That's what it is. And if you are, and in all honesty, if you love Star Wars, the universe of it is, and the absurdity of a lot of what it is, then deep down you actually really like the flaws that come along.
I think you're probably right.
Yeah.
Because the flaws is why we talk for 2.5 hours again about it, and why we get into these conversations all over the place. The flaws of Star Wars is what we love. We love all the great stuff, absolutely, the amazing things that emotionally get us and stuff. But the flaws is what we talk about. The flaws are what we like. We get enamored with, and it is what keeps us into long conversations and long thought processes, and us trying to, like David says, trying to figure out how to fill in what was meant with that.
Here. So my review of the Phantom Menace. We'll get to it and then we'll wrap this up because we've now been talking officially longer than the movie is. The Phantom Menace is a highly flawed film. Absolutely. I think Lucas hadn't directed a movie since the original Star Wars. And prior to that, he'd only directed 2 feature films with American Graffiti and THX. So he's a director who doesn't have a whole lot of experience directing. And I think it really showed in this film. And you actually do see, I think, his ability to work with actors get a little better with each movie. I also think you just see the actors kind of taking responsibility for their own performances through each of these prequels. But that said, this movie's really hard to watch if you're looking for any sort of decent acting. Yep. It's downright boring through huge swaths of it, with characters just sitting around talking to each other about trade routes and taxation and whatever else. That said, this was the first Star Wars movie in almost 20 years when it came out. And it's big and it is bold, and the set pieces are huge and enormous, and they were like nothing we'd seen before, which is what a big part of Star Wars is doing things and showing things we've never seen before. And this movie definitely brought that to the table. The pod racing scene was like nothing we'd seen before. The lightsaber duel at the end was like nothing we'd seen before. Coruscant was like nothing we had seen before. And in that way, George Lucas really, really stepped up and delivered on spectacle. And for that, I really appreciate the Phantom Menace even to this day. I don't know that I'd give it a 7, and I don't think I'd give it a 3. It sits somewhere around like a 4.5 for me. it's enjoyable to watch, but honestly, I haven't gone back to watch it just to watch it in probably more than 10 years.
Yeah, I'm with you there, actually.
So its rewatchability factor is pretty low. It's definitely not the Star Wars movie that I reach for. So, cool. Thank you guys for putting in so much time tonight.
Sure. Thanks for having me.
I'm really going to love this. We're going to be doing this every week, counting down to Rise of Skywalker. We're going to go through all the saga films. We will also pick up the mantle and do Mandalorian reviews when that drops. And let me get to that too. Disney Plus is going to be a place for Star Wars. Massive extensions on the storytelling. We've got Mandalorian, we've got a Cassian Andor series, and an Obi-Wan series. All three of those confirmed to come. So that's exciting. And we'll be covering as much of it as we can here at the podcast. I do want to invite listeners to give us their thoughts on the films. We didn't get the chance with this one. We've got, we're going to record the next one Thursday, right? We're going to be doing these on Thursday nights.
Yeah, Thursday works.
So Thursday night, this coming week, we will be reviewing Attack of the Clones. So if you have anything you want to say about Attack of the Clones, or if you want to give us a story about your experience watching The Phantom Menace, give us a call at 760-456-9469. That's the Intellectual Entertainment phone number. That's 760-456-9469. Just leave us a voicemail with your thoughts on the film, The Phantom Menace or Attack of the Clones, or both. And you may find yourself on an episode of the Sci-Fi Sunday podcast. Until the Attack of the Clones review, I'm your host, David S. Dawson. I've been sitting with my good friends,
Mike Peterson,
Theresa Dawson,
Jordan Jacobo.
There he is.
There he is.
Until the next time that we sit down to do this, may the Force be with you. Thanks again for joining us on the Sci-Fi Sunday version 2.0 podcast. And don't forget, you can call us and leave us your own voicemail of your review of any one of the Skywalker Saga films, and you may be featured in a future episode of Sci-Fi Sunday. Simply call us at 760-456-9469 and leave us your review of any one of the films from episode 1 all the way to episode 8. And we will be counting down the films over the next several weeks in the lead up to the Rise of Skywalker. If you've enjoyed this program, please check out our other podcast, The Intellectual Podcast. You can find it on our website at ixe.us, or you can find it on any one of your podcast players that you may subscribe to.